Lena stepped off the transport ship, her sensitive skin immediately registering Earth's unique atmospheric composition. As a xenobiologist from the Nari civilization, she had studied humans extensively through recordings and data transmissions, but nothing prepared her for the sensory experience of actually being among them. The Seoul Institute of Interspecies Research rose before her, a gleaming structure of glass and metal that reflected the morning sunlight. Lena's pale blue skin tingled slightly as she adjusted to the higher oxygen content in Earth's air. Her species possessed highly sensitive dermal receptors, an evolutionary advantage that allowed the Nari to detect minute changes in their environment, from electromagnetic fields to air pressure fluctuations. A human official approached her. "Welcome to Earth, Researcher Lena. I'm Minho, your liaison officer. The research team is eager to meet you." Lena nodded, careful to maintain proper distance. The Nari rarely engaged in physical contact, even among themselves. Touch was reserved only for medical examinations or the most intimate relationships. She had been thoroughly briefed on human greeting customs and was determined to avoid their customary handshakes. "Thank you for this opportunity," she said, her translator device converting her harmonic speech patterns into human language. "I look forward to working with your scientists." Minho gestured toward the building's entrance. "Please follow me. Dr. Tai is waiting to give you a tour of the facilities." As they walked through the Institute's corridors, Lena observed humans greeting each other with casual touches, handshakes, shoulder pats, even brief hugs. Such behavior would be considered shocking on her homeworld. The Nari maintained strict personal space boundaries of at least arm's length. They reached a large laboratory where several humans worked at various stations. A male human approached them, his expression friendly and open. "You must be our visiting researcher," he said, extending his hand automatically. "I'm Dr. Tai, head of xenobiology." Lena froze momentarily. She had planned to politely decline any physical greetings, but the earnestness in his expression made her hesitate. This cultural exchange was important for both species. Perhaps adapting to some human customs would demonstrate goodwill. "Yes, I am Lena," she replied and cautiously extended her hand. The moment their skin connected, a jolt of sensation, unlike anything she had ever experienced, traveled up her arm. Her dermal receptors flared with activity, registering the human's bioelectric field in vivid detail. The sensation was intense, overwhelming, and strangely pleasant. Dr. Tai seemed unaware of her internal reaction. "It's an honor to have you join our team. Your research on adaptive biology is groundbreaking." Lena struggled to compose herself, her mind still processing the lingering sensation from their brief contact. "Thank you," she managed, withdrawing her hand perhaps too quickly. "Are you all right?" Dr. Tai asked, noticing her widened eyes and the subtle violet flush spreading across her blue skin, the Nari equivalent of blushing. "Yes," she assured him, regaining her professional demeanor. "I'm just adjusting to Earth's atmospheric conditions. The sensory input is different here." Dr. Tai nodded with understanding. "Of course, we can proceed slowly with the tour. Please let me know if you need to rest." The laboratory tour continued, with Lena gradually regaining her composure. Dr. Tai introduced her to various team members, most of whom respectfully bowed instead of offering handshakes after noticing her initial reaction. "This will be your workstation," Dr. Tai explained, showing her to a specialized area equipped with both human technology and adaptations for Nari physiological needs. "We've adjusted the lighting and temperature based on the specifications your government provided." "This is most satisfactory," Lena replied, genuinely impressed by their thoughtfulness. As she was examining the equipment, another researcher hurried past, accidentally brushing against her arm. Again, that strange, almost electric sensation coursed through her. She inhaled sharply, drawing curious glances from nearby humans. "Sorry about that," Dr. Ta said. "We should have warned everyone about Nari personal space requirements." "It's fine," Lena said quickly, not wanting to create awkwardness. Part of cultural exchange involves adaptation to different norms. That evening, alone in her assigned quarters, Lena recorded her first day's observations in her personal log. Earth date, March 17, 2025. First day at Human Research Facility complete. Primary observation of significance. Human physical contact produces unexpected neurological responses in Nari physiology. When skin-to-skin contact occurred, my dermal receptors registered intense stimulation patterns completely unlike anything documented in previous xenobiological research. She paused, considering whether to include her subjective experience. The sensation was not unpleasant. She continued hesitantly. In fact, it triggered a cascade of neurochemical responses similar to those our species experiences during rare moments of sensory pleasure. This warrants further investigation, though I must proceed with caution to maintain scientific objectivity. Lena closed her log and gazed out the window at Seoul's nighttime skyline. The lights of the human city sparkled against the darkness, reminding her of the bioluminescent festivals on her homeworld. She found herself wondering what other unexpected discoveries awaited her during this exchange program. The next morning, Lena arrived at the laboratory earlier than required, eager to begin her work. Dr. Ta was already there, analyzing data at his workstation. "Good morning, Lena." He greeted her with a smile, but maintained a respectful distance. "Did you rest well?" "Yes, thank you," she replied, setting up her equipment. "I'm eager to begin our collaborative research." Throughout the day, Lena found herself increasingly aware of Dr. Ta's movements around the lab. When he approached to examine her initial findings, she felt an unexpected anticipation, almost hoping for another accidental contact. This reaction confused and concerned her. Such thoughts were unprofessional and potentially compromising to her mission. Yet as the weeks passed, Lena could not deny her growing fascination. Each brief touch, a brush of fingers when passing equipment, an accidental bump in the crowded lab, sent waves of sensation through her nervous system. She began to understand why humans engaged in physical contact so freely. If they experience even a fraction of what she felt, their tactile social customs made perfect sense. What had begun as a standard scientific exchange was quickly becoming something far more complex and potentially revolutionary, for her and possibly for her entire species. 3 weeks into her assignment at Seoul Institute, Lena sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the day's research data. But instead of focusing on the official xenobiology project, she found herself once again examining her secret personal recordings. Day 22. Human Physical Contact Study. Observation 37. She whispered as she typed. Brief touch to outer forearm during specimen exchange with Dr. Ta. Duration, approximately 2.7 seconds. Physiological response. Immediate sensory pathway activation. Pulse increase of 24%. Skin receptor heightened sensitivity lasting 4.6 minutes after contact ended. Lena paused, debating whether to include her subjective experience. Scientific objectivity demanded complete honesty, even in this unofficial research. Subjective notes. Sensation increasingly pleasant rather than merely surprising. Possible development of anticipatory response. Found myself positioning equipment to increase likelihood of incidental contact. She closed her personal datapad with a sigh. What had begun as simple scientific curiosity was becoming something more complex. The Nari had evolved with hypersensitive skin capable of detecting minute environmental changes, a survival advantage on their homeworld. But this sensitivity had led to a culture that strictly limited physical contact. Touch between Nari was formal, brief, and typically only for medical or reproductive purposes. Human touch, however, was entirely different. Their skin emitted a unique bioelectric signature that resonated with Nari dermal receptors in unexpected ways. The sensation was pleasant in ways her people had never experienced, or at least never documented. The next morning, Lena arrived at the laboratory precisely 3 minutes before her scheduled start time. Dr. Ta was already there, as she had predicted based on his consistent work patterns. "Good morning, Lena," he greeted her. I've been reviewing your analysis of the cellular regeneration patterns. Remarkable work. Thank you, she replied, deliberately placing her datapad on the narrow workspace between them. I've identified several additional patterns I'd like to discuss. As expected, when Dr. Tai leaned over to view her findings, their arms brushed against each other. The familiar sensation coursed through her, a pleasant tingling that spread from the contact point up her arm and across her chest. She maintained her professional expression despite the rush of neurochemicals now flooding her system. These findings could revolutionize regenerative medicine, Dr. Ta said, apparently unaware of her internal reaction. Especially this protein sequence here. He pointed to the screen, his finger accidentally touching hers. Lena couldn't suppress a slight intake of breath. "Are you all right?" he asked, looking at her with concern. "Yes," she assured him quickly, just excited about the research possibilities. Throughout the day, Lena created several more accidental opportunities for brief contact, reaching for the same laboratory tool simultaneously, standing slightly closer than necessary during collaborative work. Each touch provided new data for her secret research project, and each seemed to intensify the pleasant sensations rather than diminishing them through habituation. That evening, Minho stopped by the lab as Lena was finishing her work. "How are you adapting to Earth, researcher Lena?" he asked politely. "Quite well," she replied. "Human customs are fascinating. I've noticed you seem more comfortable with our team now. At first, you appeared startled whenever someone came near you." Lena felt her skin flush violet with embarrassment. Had her behavior been so obvious? "Yes, I've been studying human social interactions," she said carefully. "On my world, we maintain much greater physical distance. I've read that the Nari have exceptionally sensitive skin receptors," Minho commented. "Does that make our environment uncomfortable for you?" This was her chance to gather more information without raising suspicion. "Actually, I've been meaning to ask about human tactile customs. Your species engages in frequent casual touch, handshakes, pats on shoulders, even embraces. What purpose does this serve?" Minho seemed surprised by the question. "I've never really thought about it. Touch is reassuring, I suppose. It builds trust and social bonds. Studies show human infants require physical contact for proper development, and the need never really goes away. Touch reduces stress hormones and increases feelings of connection." "Fascinating," Lena murmured, mentally recording this information. "And do all humans experience touch the same way?" "Not at all." Minho laughed. "Some people love hugs, others hate them. Some cultures are more tactile than others. It's quite individual." After Minho left, Lena added his insights to her growing research file. If human touch affected even humans differently based on individual sensitivity, perhaps the intense reactions she experienced were simply due to the Nari's naturally more sensitive dermal receptors. The next day brought an unexpected development. During a delicate experiment requiring precise measurements, Dr. Ta stood directly behind Lena, reaching around her to adjust an instrument setting. The prolonged proximity sent waves of sensation through her entire body, so intense that she nearly dropped the specimen container. "Sorry," Dr. Ta said, stepping back quickly. "Did I bump you?" "No," Lena managed, her voice slightly unsteady. The specimen moved unexpectedly. That night, Lena faced a scientific dilemma. Her personal research had reached a point where she needed more data, more controlled data, but obtaining it would require either revealing her unofficial study or finding a pretext for increased physical contact. "Computer, access Earth Medical Database," she instructed. "Search terms: therapeutic touch, tactile therapy, physiological effects of physical contact." The results were illuminating. Humans had extensively studied the benefits of touch, from infant development to elderly care. There were established therapeutic protocols involving carefully controlled touch to treat various conditions. Lena formulated a plan. She would propose a comparative study of human and Nari sensory systems, including controlled tests of tactile response. Such research would be valuable for the official exchange program while allowing her to gather the data she sought. The next morning, she approached Dr. Todd with her proposal, careful to frame it in terms of scientific and medical benefits. "An intriguing idea," he said when she finished explaining. "Cross-species sensory comparison could yield valuable insights for both our peoples. I would need your assistance with the human baseline measurements," Lena added, maintaining a professional tone despite her quickening pulse. "And you could record my responses to create Nari baseline data." Dr. Ta nodded thoughtfully. "We should establish proper protocols and record-keeping methods. This could be groundbreaking research." As Lena left the laboratory that evening, she felt both scientific excitement and a strange nervousness. Tomorrow they would begin the controlled experiments, systematic, documented physical contact under the guise of official research. Part of her wondered if she was crossing an ethical line by not revealing her previous observations and personal reactions. But another part, a growing part, simply looked forward to understanding more about this unexpected connection between their species and to experiencing more of the increasingly addictive sensation of human touch. Lena adjusted the sensitivity settings on the biometric scanner and checked the privacy seals on the laboratory doors. Today marked the first official session of their newly approved research project, Comparative Tactile Response Patterns Between Human and Nari Physiology. After weeks of preparation and obtaining the necessary permissions, she and Dr. Todd were finally ready to begin their experiments. "Recording systems online," Dr. Todd confirmed, his voice professional, but with an undercurrent of excitement that matched her own. "Are you comfortable proceeding as the first subject?" "Yes," Lena replied, taking her position on the examination chair. "It makes sense to establish Nari baseline responses first." She had carefully designed the protocol to begin with simple, brief contacts to fingertips, gradually progressing to other areas like hands, arms, and shoulders. Each touch would be precisely timed, with comprehensive monitoring of her physiological responses. Beginning with test point 1, Dr. Tai announced for the recording. Light contact to subject's index finger for 5 seconds. He reached out and gently touched the tip of her finger with his own. Despite her mental preparation, Lena felt the now familiar rush of sensation. The monitoring equipment immediately registered spikes in her neural activity and changes in her dermal electrical patterns. "Fascinating," Dr. Ta murmured, watching the data stream across his monitor. "Your skin receptors are showing activity patterns unlike anything in our human medical database." They proceeded methodically through the test points. With each contact, the data became more compelling. Lena's physiology responded to human touch in ways that suggested potential medical applications. Her neural pathways showed increased activity in regions associated with pain suppression and immune response. These readings suggest a positive therapeutic effect, Dr. Ta noted as they completed the first session. If similar responses occur in other Nari subjects, this could have significant medical implications for your people. Lena nodded, trying to maintain scientific detachment despite the lingering tingling sensations across her skin. "Tomorrow we should reverse roles. I need to establish how human physiology responds to Nari touch for comparison." The following week brought a scheduled communication with her superiors back home. Lena prepared her regular research update, including preliminary findings from their touch study. Director Han's holographic image appeared in her quarters exactly on schedule. "Researcher Lena, your reports have been received," the older Nari stated formally. "The Council has concerns about your recent research focus." Lena felt a flutter of apprehension. "Concerns, Director. Your last 3 reports contain extensive documentation of human tactile interactions rather than the assigned biological cataloging work." Director Han's tone remained neutral, but Lena detected disapproval in her posture. "Your attention appears disproportionately focused on physical contact with the human researchers. The data suggests potentially groundbreaking medical applications," Lena explained, bringing up charts showing the neural response patterns. Human touch appears to stimulate dormant pathways in Nari physiology that could help treat several conditions that have long affected our people. The Council questions the objectivity of your research, Director Han replied. Your personal notes contain subjective language that suggests emotional involvement beyond scientific interest. Lena felt her skin flush violet with embarrassment. They had accessed her private research logs. I've maintained thorough documentation of all physiological responses, including subjective experiences, as proper scientific methodology requires. You will submit all research materials for review immediately, Director Han instructed. Further investigation of human tactile interaction is suspended pending Council evaluation. After the transmission ended, Lena sat motionless, her mind racing. The Council's reaction was exactly what she had feared. The conservative elements of Nari society viewed any challenge to their touch-avoidant culture with suspicion. The next day, Lena arrived at the laboratory to find Dr. Ta reviewing their recent test results. "These patterns are remarkable," he said as she entered. "I've been comparing them with known therapeutic touch responses in humans and—" He stopped, noticing her troubled expression. "What's wrong?" "My superiors have ordered a suspension of our touch research," Lena explained. "They're concerned about potential contamination of Nari cultural practices." Dr. Tai set down his tablet. "I don't understand. The medical applications alone justify continued research. The Nari have maintained minimal physical contact for thousands of years," Lena said. "It's not just a practice, but a cornerstone of our social structure and identity. The idea that we might benefit from something as simple as touch challenges fundamental beliefs." "And what do you believe?" he asked quietly. Lena hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. "I believe we've denied ourselves something valuable. The sensations I've experienced during our experiments are not just pleasant but potentially healing. My readings show activation of neurological pathways associated with stress reduction, immune function enhancement, and pain management." "Then we need to continue the research," Dr. Tai insisted. "With proper documentation, we can present evidence that will convince even your most conservative leaders." "They've accessed my personal research logs," Lena admitted. "They know I've been studying human touch outside official protocols." Dr. Ta looked surprised, then understanding dawned on his face. "That's why you sometimes positioned yourself where contact was likely to occur. You were conducting unofficial observations." Lena's skin darkened with embarrassment. "Yes. From the first accidental touch when I arrived, I experienced reactions that demanded investigation. I should have been more transparent about my methods." Instead of the disapproval she expected, Dr. Ta smiled slightly. "Actually, that's excellent scientific curiosity. When you observe an unexpected phenomenon, you investigate, even before formal protocols are established." His understanding gave Lena courage. "The Council has requested all my research materials, but they haven't explicitly forbidden continued experimentation while they review the data." "Then we continue," Dr. Ta decided. "But we'll be absolutely meticulous with documentation and focus entirely on the medical applications." Over the next 2 weeks, they expanded their research to include volunteer human subjects who received carefully controlled touches from Lena. The results showed interesting, though less dramatic, effects on human physiology. Human skin did register unique electrical patterns when touched by Nari, with mild therapeutic effects on inflammation and circulation. When the scheduled communication with Director Han arrived, Lena was prepared with comprehensive data presentations. "The Council has reviewed your materials," Director Han began without preamble. "While they acknowledge potential medical applications, they remain concerned about broader cultural implications. With respect, Director, medicine and culture are not separate domains," Lena replied. "If something as simple as touch can improve health outcomes for our people, doesn't that merit serious consideration, regardless of cultural tradition? The Council has authorized a limited continuation of your research," Director Han said after a pause. "But they are sending Observer June to monitor the work directly. He arrives tomorrow." After the transmission ended, Lena realized this development could either validate their work or end it completely. Observer June was known for his traditional views, but he was also a respected medical researcher. If they could convince him of the therapeutic value of human touch, they might gain a powerful ally. What had begun as personal curiosity had evolved into something with potential consequences for both species. As Lena prepared the laboratory for tomorrow's crucial demonstration, she wondered if she had set in motion changes that would transform Neri society forever. Observer June arrived at Seoul Institute precisely at the scheduled time, his tall, slender form moving with the careful precision typical of elder Neri. His blue skin had faded to a pale aquamarine with age, and the ceremonial markings on his face indicated his high status in the scientific council. Lina and Dr. Ta waited in the main laboratory, surrounded by their research displays and equipment. Researcher Lina, Observer June greeted her with formal distance. Dr. Ta. He acknowledged the human with a slight nod, but did not extend his hand, clearly aware of human customs, but choosing to maintain Nari protocol. We have prepared a comprehensive presentation of our findings. Lina began, gesturing to the displays. I will observe an actual demonstration before reviewing data, June stated firmly. The Council requires direct verification of your methods and results. Dr. Ta stepped forward. We've prepared a simple demonstration protocol that clearly shows the physiological responses we've documented. For the next hour, they conducted a carefully controlled experiment with Lina as the subject. The monitors displayed her neural activity, dermal electrical patterns, and hormone levels as Dr. Tai administered precisely timed touches to specific points on her hands and arms. Observer June watched in silence, his expression unreadable as the monitors showed dramatic spikes in Lina's neural activity and endorphin release. Now, Observer June, if you would permit a simple comparison, Dr. Ta suggested cautiously, we could demonstrate how these responses differ from Nari to Nari contact. After a moment's hesitation, June agreed. Lina performed the same protocol, touching the same points on June's hand and arm. The monitors showed significantly lower response patterns, the normal, minimal reactions typical of Nari physiology. Interesting but concerning, June finally said when the demonstration concluded. The intensity of neural response to human touch suggests potential for dependency formation. This confirms the Council's concerns about cultural contamination. But the medical applications, Lina began, cannot be separated from cultural implications, June interrupted. This research must cease immediately. Researcher Lina, you will return home for evaluation and reassignment. Dr. Ta stepped forward. With respect, Observer June, the therapeutic benefits we've documented could help thousands of Nari who suffer from chronic pain, immune disorders, and stress-related conditions. Dr. Tai, your concern for our people is noted, June replied coldly. However, you cannot understand the delicate balance of Nari society. Our touch-limited culture evolved over millennia for good reasons. After June left to prepare his official report, Lina felt a heaviness settle over her. He will recommend immediate termination of our research and my return to Nari Prime. Dr. Ta paced the laboratory, frustrated. There must be something we can do. The data clearly shows beneficial effects. Nari society values stability above progress. Lina explained sadly, our long lifespans make us resistant to change. That evening, as Lina packed her research materials, she received an unexpected message from Minho. Emergency meeting in conference room 3. Come immediately. When she arrived, she found Dr. Ta, Minho, and several other human researchers gathered around a display showing news headlines. What's happened? She asked. Minho pointed to the screen. Someone leaked preliminary results from your research to both Earth and Nari media outlets. The story is spreading rapidly. The headlines told the story. Human touch. Miracle cure for alien race. Nari government suppresses breakthrough medical research. Cultural exchange discovers healing power of human contact. This is disastrous, Lina whispered. The Council values controlled information release above all. They will assume I leaked the data deliberately. It wasn't you, Dr. Tai asked. Of course not. This will only reinforce their decision to terminate our research. The situation deteriorated rapidly over the next days. Observer June received urgent communications from the Council and implemented immediate restrictions. Lena was confined to her quarters except for supervised laboratory appearances, and all human contact was strictly prohibited. The Council has ordered your return on the next transport, June informed her coldly. They are also evaluating diplomatic repercussions for this breach of research protocols. I did not leak the information, Lena protested. Your failure to maintain proper scientific detachment created this situation, June replied. Your personal logs reveal increasingly emotional language regarding human touch. You have compromised your objectivity and our cultural integrity. Later that day, Dr. Ta managed to gain approval for a final research meeting. Observer June insisted on being present, standing rigidly by the door as they spoke. I've analyzed the complete data set, Dr. Ta said, his voice formal for June's benefit, but his eyes conveying deeper concern to Lena. The therapeutic applications are undeniable. Human touch triggers neural pathways in Nari physiology that could treat chronic pain, depression, and immune dysfunction. Treatments that have failed for centuries could be replaced with simple human touch therapy. The Council has reviewed this data, June stated. While the medical benefits appear significant, the risk of cultural disruption is deemed too great. What cultural disruption? Dr. Ta challenged. Controlled therapeutic touch in medical settings would not change your entire society. You don't understand, Jun replied, his tone slightly less rigid. Our touch-avoidant culture developed as protection against predator species that could sense our electromagnetic signatures through touch. This protective behavior became codified in our cultural practices over millennia. But those predators no longer exist, Lena pointed out. We've maintained these restrictions out of tradition, not necessity. June turned to her sharply. And who decides when traditions should change? Individuals based on personal preference. That leads to societal chaos. As the argument continued, Lena noticed something unexpected. June's steadfast opposition seemed to be wavering slightly as Dr. Tai presented more detailed medical evidence. The human's passion for the research was having an effect. That night, Lena received a private message from an unexpected source, Observer Jun himself. Meet me in the secondary laboratory. Come alone. When she arrived, she found June examining their research data. I had a nephew, he said without preamble, who suffered from neural degradation syndrome. None of our treatments helped. He experienced constant pain until his death last year. Lena remained silent, sensing he had more to say. Your data suggests human touch therapy might have alleviated his suffering. June turned to face her. I cannot officially support continuation of this research, but I am curious whether you have explored dosage requirements. Lena realized what he was really asking, whether limited controlled human touch could provide therapeutic benefits without leading to dependency or cultural change. We found that even brief, localized contact produces significant benefits, she explained, showing him specific data sets. 5 minutes of targeted touch therapy reduced pain indicators by 64% in our simulations, with effects lasting several hours. June nodded slowly. A scheduled medical treatment approach rather than general cultural adoption. Exactly, Lena confirmed, hope rising. We don't need to change Nari culture entirely, just allow controlled therapeutic applications in medical settings. For the first time, she saw genuine consideration in June's expression. I will need more evidence before I could possibly advocate for such an exception to council policy. The transport doesn't leave for 3 days, Lena pointed out. We could gather that evidence if you authorized limited continuation of our research. June studied her for a long moment. You have 2 days to prove this can be contained to medical applications only. After that, I make my final recommendation to the council. As he left, Lena realized this small opening might be her only chance to save the research and perhaps help countless Neri suffering from conditions that might respond to this new therapy. The grand chamber of the Interspecies Council fell silent as Lena approached the central podium. 6 months had passed since her return from Earth, and today would determine the fate of her controversial research. The semicircular rows of seats held not only the 9 members of the Neri Science Council, but also a small delegation of human representatives, including Dr. Ta. Lena activated the holographic display, revealing images of neural pathways and statistical charts. Her voice remained steady despite her nervousness. Honored council members and human delegates, I present the completed findings of our human Neri touch research study. The lead counselor, an elderly Neri named Sora, nodded for her to continue. Our initial discovery was unexpected, Lena explained. Human touch triggers unique responses in Neri physiology that our own species' touch does not produce. This occurs because human skin emits bioelectric patterns that resonate with our dermal receptors at specific frequencies. She displayed brain scans showing bright patterns of neural activity. These are the brain patterns of a Neri patient suffering from chronic pain syndrome, she continued. This second image shows the same patient after receiving 5 minutes of targeted touch therapy from a human practitioner. Pain indicators reduced by 78% with effects lasting approximately 6 hours. Murmurs spread through the audience. Lena noticed observer June watching intently from his seat among the Science Council members. His support following their final days of research on Earth had been crucial in allowing her to continue her work after returning home. We have now completed trials with 200 Neri volunteers suffering from various conditions, Lena continued. The results consistently show significant improvements in chronic pain, immune function, and stress-related disorders. Most importantly, we found no evidence of dependency formation or other negative effects. Counselor Sora leaned forward. Researcher Lena, while the medical benefits appear significant, many remain concerned about broader cultural implications. Our touch-avoidant practices have defined Neri society for millennia. With respect, Counselor, Lena replied, our touch-avoidant culture evolved as protection against predator species that could sense our electromagnetic signatures. That threat no longer exists, but we've maintained these restrictions out of tradition rather than necessity. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. I am not proposing we abandon our cultural practices entirely. Rather, I suggest we allow controlled therapeutic applications in medical settings. Patients suffering from specific conditions could receive human touch therapy from trained practitioners, similar to how we use other foreign treatments. Dr. Tai rose from his seat among the human delegation. If I may address the council. When granted permission, he continued, we've developed strict protocols for human practitioners, including specialized training and certification. Touch therapy would be administered only by authorized medical personnel in appropriate facilities. Counselor Sora turned to observer June. You initially opposed this research but later supported its continuation. What changed your position? June stood slowly. I witnessed the results firsthand. My sister's child suffers from neural degradation syndrome. When standard treatments failed, I allowed a controlled trial of human touch therapy. The improvement was remarkable. For the first time in years, the child experienced relief from constant pain. His personal testimony created a powerful impression. The council members exchanged meaningful glances. There is another aspect to consider, Lena added. Our research revealed that Neri touch also produces mild beneficial effects in humans, particularly for inflammatory conditions. This could become a valuable exchange. Humans helping Neri with pain management, while Neri assist humans with inflammatory disorders. The council withdrew for deliberation. Lena waited anxiously, standing near Dr. Tai, but maintaining appropriate distance in the formal setting. Whatever they decide, he said quietly, you've accomplished something important. This research will help people. Our work together changed my understanding of what's possible, Lena replied. Not just medically, but between our species. When the council returned, Councillor Soar announced their decision. The Interspecies Council approves the establishment of a supervised human Nari touch therapy program on a trial basis. After 1 year, we will evaluate its medical benefits and cultural impact before deciding on permanent implementation. 3 months later, Lena stood beside Dr. Tai at the opening ceremony for the first human Nari touch therapy center in the capital city of Nari Prime. The modern facility combined elements of both cultures, clean lines, and practical efficiency favored by the Nari, alongside warm lighting and comfortable furnishings preferred by humans. I never imagined we would come this far, Lena admitted as they watched the first human therapists meeting their Nari counterparts. There were moments when I thought the research would be permanently terminated. Science prevails when the evidence is compelling enough, Dr. Tay replied. Though I suspect your persistence had something to do with it too. The center represented a new chapter in human-Nari relations. Specialized treatment rooms were equipped with advanced monitoring systems to track patient responses and refine protocols. Human touch therapists trained in Nari physiology worked alongside Nari medical practitioners who administered their touch therapy to human patients with inflammatory conditions. In the main reception area, a small group of Nari children with various medical conditions waited with their parents. These young patients, suffering from conditions that traditional Nari medicine struggled to treat, would be among the first to receive the new therapy. A young Nari girl with neural sensitivity disorder approached Lena. "Are you the scientist who discovered the human touch treatment?" she asked shyly. "I was part of the research team," Lena replied, kneeling to the child's level. "Dr. Ta and I worked together. My mother says it might help stop my pain," the girl said hopefully. "I've tried everything else." "We have good reason to believe it will help," Dr. Ta said, joining them but maintaining appropriate distance from the child. As the center began its first day of operation, Lena observed the careful interactions between species. Human therapists followed precise protocols, their touch deliberate and medical rather than casual. Nari patients received treatment in private rooms with full monitoring and physician oversight. That evening, as they reviewed the day's patient data, Lena and Dr. Ta found themselves alone in the research office. "The preliminary results are even better than our trial suggested," Lena noted, examining the neural response patterns. Patient 17 showed complete pain resolution for nearly 8 hours. "We've only just begun," Dr. Tay replied. "Think of how many people this will help on both our worlds." In that moment, Lena realized how far they had come from her first accidental experience of human touch months ago. What had begun as scientific curiosity had evolved into something that would benefit countless individuals across 2 species. "There's something I've been meaning to ask," Dr. Ta said, interrupting her thoughts. "The exchange program that brought you to Earth ends next month. What are your plans?" "The Council has approved my request to continue leading this research," Lena replied. "I'll be staying on as Director of Interspecies Medical Studies." Dr. Ta smiled. "Then we'll continue working together." "Yes," Lena agreed, feeling a sense of rightness about this path. "There's still so much to learn about the connection between our species." As more patients arrived each day, word spread about the remarkable results. What had once been considered impossible, beneficial physical contact between humans and Nari, was becoming accepted medical practice. And somewhere in the ongoing research, Lena and Dr. Tai were discovering something equally important, a bridge between 2 worlds built through the simple, healing power of touch.